The handouts or review materials must be treated with utmost confidentiality. It shall be the responsibility of the person whose name appears therein that the handouts or review materials are not photocopied or in any way reproduced, shared, or lent to any person or disposed in any manner. Any handouts or review materials found in the possession of another person whose name does not appear therein shall be prima facie evidence of violation of RA 8293. Top-notch review materials are updated every 6 months based on the current trends and feedback. Please buy all recommended review books and other materials.
Good day, doctors, and welcome back. I am Dr. Mark Louis-Man, and I'll be your lecturer for the last installment of your Anatomy and Histology video lectures. So this is Histology. Oh, wait! Hindi nyo ba ako makita? Well, nasa histology kasi kayo eh. So, kailangan natin ng microscope para makakita ng mga minute structures. Sige, Dok, tara, silip ka. Oh, di ba? Sabi ko sa iyo eh. Kailangan lang ng microscope para makita ko. Well, kidding aside, again, welcome back to Histology. And I'll walk you through with a quick review of histology. So let's begin first with a quick definition. So when we talk about histology, this is only the study of tissues and how these tissues are formed in order to arrange an organ. So it's from the Greek word histos, meaning tissues, and logos, study of. And we all know that histology encompasses the study of your cells, your ECMs or your extracellular components, their organization into your tissues, then forming into organ, and then joining them together, you will form an organ system. So let's begin with a general overview of slide preparation. So this is the general overview, showing you the different steps in preparing for a slide. We have the tissue here. We'll do fixation, dehydration, clearing, infiltration, and embedding. So let's try to discuss it one by one, beginning with your fixation. Fixation, it's important because it preserves the tissue structure. And in preserving it, we will prevent the degradation. Hindi siya masisira. So your pieces of organs, they are placed in solutions of fixatives. And yung mga fixatives na common na ginagamit is your formalin. And this is for light microscopy. While your glutaraldehyde naman used for electron microscopy. So again, fixatives, we have formalin and glutaraldehyde. Now, next step is dehydration. We remove cell water and the fixative by using a series of alcohol solution. Usually, pataas ang concentration yan, beginning with 60-70% until ma-reach natin yung 100% ethanol. Okay? Why do we do dehydration? In order to remove the cell water and the fixative, depending kung anong ginamit, formalin or glutaraldehyde. Next is your clearing. Clearing naman, you are removing your alcohol from the tissue using a clearing agent. What is the most popular clearing agent? It's your xylene. Xylene for clearing. Okay? And then we have infiltration. You will now soak the piece of organ in a melted paraffin wax. Patitigasin siya para ma-facilitate ang handling and preparation for cutting sa microtome. Now, embedding naman, okay, we will embed the paraffin-infiltrated tissue in a small mold. And then, ready for sectioning in a microtome. This is your microtome. Your paraffin block is trimmed to expose the tissue for sectioning or slicing on a microtome. So, this is your paraffin block kung saan nakalagay yung tissue nyo. And then, your drive wheel, then there's a steel knife that will cut it now very thin. So after natin magkaroon ng slicing of the paraffin block, we are now ready for staining. Staining is we are just applying dyes on the section of the slide para ma-visualize natin yung mga architectural pattern of tissues and their physical characteristics. And of course, syempre, yung relationship na rin ng different microscopic structure. Ang pinaka-common na ginagamit natin na staining technique is your hematoxylin and eosin. Yung hematoxylin, ayun yung purplish blue. Yung AOC naman ay yung red or pink. Pero mas marami pang staining, no? Pero for now, at least ma-review kayo na yung H&E yung pinaka most common used na staining technique. Okay, so that's quick lang para lang malaman natin. Ngayon na tayo may mga slides na na-prepare din natin siya. It's ready for observation under a microscope. But before that, let's review again the cell structure and function. I know, nagaling na kayo ng physiology, so na-review nyo na yon. So let's just have a different approach in the lens of Junckera or Hunckera. So again, cells in all tissues are your basic structural and functional units. Matik yan. Pero yung tamang term na ipapasok natin is your cell differentiation. When we talk about cell differentiation, yung mga cells natin, nagiging efficient sila in organizing into a certain tissue with a specialized function. Okay? So syempre, kumbaga, you are now differentiating yourself from the pool of stem cell and you're going to have a specific function. Syempre, depende sa function mo, mag-iiba yung shape mo. Okay? So this is a nice summary table from the book, okay, showing you yung different activities ng mga differentiated cells. For example, no, yung general cellular activity niya, movement. What do you expect na specialized cells ang meron doon? Yung muscles and other contractile cells. Kapag naman adhesion, tight junction between cells, protection, no, from water from one side to another, yung mga epithelial cells nyo naman yung nag-specialize doon. So, you can just read on the other example, but we will discuss it one by one. Ang importante lang sa table na to, ma-realize nyo na bawat cell, okay, when they have different function, they will have different specialized structures that you will identify later on. Okay, so let's begin with your plasma membrane. What is the other term of your plasma membrane? Your cell membrane or plasmalemma. Okay? Parang sa cell, ang tawag sarcolemma. Kapag sa neurons, neurolemma. No? So, nandyan lagi si lemma. Ayan yung ating plasma membrane. And you know that the function of your plasma membrane is to have a regulation between the inside and the outside environment of the cell. So, it acts as a selective barrier, regulating now the passage of different materials into and out of the cell and facilitating the transport of specific molecules. Going back to tissue, dapat alam niyo yung mga different type of transports. Now, we also have your membrane proteins. They act as a specific recognition and signaling function, playing now a key role in the interactions of the cell with its environment. Kasi ayan yung kanyang mode of communication, the outside environment, also in the inside. You will know later on, di ba, yung mga second messenger system. And then we have the membrane phospholipids sa sobrang sikat talaga. We all know it's amphipathic, meaning dalawa ang kanyang form, no? You have your two non-polar, hydrophobic, takot sa tubig, or water-repelling long-chain fatty acid. So ito yon 1 and 2. And you have the charged polar, hydrophilic, or water-loving, or water-attracting head that bears your phosphate. Okay? Now, your phospholipid stable when organized into a double layer or bilayer. Kaya siya nag-form into that shape because you want to have a stable plasma membrane. Now, ano pa, di ba? Based doon sa ating previous lectures, cholesterol nyo, restricting movements, and modulating the fluidity of all membrane components. Cholesterol, fluidity of the membrane. And then we have here your glycocalyx. It's a delicate cell surface coating. Importante yan, no? Because it acts as a receptor and it also acts as a cell adhesion and cell recognition site. So you have your glycolipids, okay? So this is your outer lipid, which includes your oligosaccharide chains. And then you have your glycoproteins linked with a sugar chain. Kaya siya tinawag na glycolipids, sugar, and lipids. Glycoproteins, sugar, and proteins. Now, your proteins are major constituents of your membrane. Diba, alam naman natin, we have the integral proteins and these are incorporated directly within the lipid bilayer. Ito yung example ng inner integral protein. Okay? So, yung mga naka-attach sa inyong bilipid layer. And then you have your peripheral proteins. These are bound Depende kung sa outer side, outer leaflet, or inner leaflet. So you have here your peripheral protein inside the cell, and then you have here your peripheral protein outside the cell. Now, next na ating organelle is your ribosomes. Okay? Your ribosomes assembles your polypeptides. Alam nyo naman, di ba yung polypeptides, kapag pinagdikit-dikit-dikit nyo mga amino acids or AA, it will form into your polypeptides. And, syempre, going back, no, with the central dogma and translation, you need this amino acid as a template. So, ang importante lang, dapat lahat, matik, alam na. Pag narinig ang word na ribosomes, engage in protein synthesis. Protein synthesis lang po ha, hindi engage in other things. Ribosomes, protein synthesis. And then we have your endoplasmic reticulum. This is the site for synthesis of your proteins and lipids. We have two types, your rough endoplasmic and your smooth endoplasmic. Your rough endoplasmic reticulum is the site for synthesis of mostly of your membrane-bound proteins. Okay? So, kaya siya naging rough kasi on the surface of that endoplasmic reticulum, you have your ribosomes. While your smooth endoplasmic reticulum, they lack your polyribosomes or your ribosomes. Remember this, your SER or your smooth endoplasmic reticulum is the site of lipid synthesis and carbohydrate metabolism. It detoxifies your alcohol, barbiturates, and other drugs. Responsible din ng ating smooth endoplasmic reticulum for releasing calcium ions when muscles need to contract. SER, where in the muscle, it's your sarcoplasmic reticulum. Next is your Golgi apparatus. It completes your post-translational modification of proteins produced in your RER. Anong ginagawa niya? It packages and addresses proteins to their proper destination. Kaya kung mapapansin nyo, yung Golgi apparatus nyo, two-face yan. Dalawa ang kanyang muka. No? You have your cis and your trans. Si cis yung nagre-receive ng inyong mga vesicles coming from your RER. So, ang nag-out naman o yung nag-transport is your trans phase. This is your Golgi shipping region or your Golgi shipping region. So again, dalawang mukha ni Golgi, si cis na friendly na tumatanggap ng vesicles at si trans na nag-out na ng mga packaged proteins. Now, next is your lysosomes. This is the site of intracellular digestion. And it is a membrane-limited vesicles and is in a, para siya nasa bag, no? And it contains about 40 different hydrolytic enzymes. And particularly abundant siya with cells na may phagocytic activity like your macrophages and neutrophils. Kasi ay ang mga enzymes na yan yung ginagamit ng mga ating mga cells in order to kill bacteria or viruses. Next is your proteasome. Okay, degrade your denatured or otherwise non-functional polypeptides. So, they removes your protein that is no longer needed by the cell. So, how they do perform that? No? So, there's this recognition protein, okay, your ubiquitin, and your ubiquitin now will attach to your denatured proteins or polypeptides na hindi na kailangan. So, once na ikaw ay nakapitan yung ubiquitin, humanda ka na. Okay? You will be, you'll suffer under the function of your proteasomes. So, that's your ubiquitin proteasome pathway. Okay? Now, your mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell, major site of ATP synthesis. You will know more of your mitochondria in biochemistry. Pero dito, sa part na ito, tandaan nyo lang that your mitochondria of stressed cell releases your cytochrome C. Okay, this is from the inner membrane of the mitochondria. Now, when you release your cytochrome C, it will trigger a lot of regulated series of events, culminating now in your cell death or apoptosis. Okay, apoptosis is different from your necrosis. Apoptosis is somehow regulated, it is contained, and does not cause inflammation. You will know more of that in pathology. Okay, basta cytochrome C, mitochondria. Then we have our peroxisome. These are spherical organelles enclosed by a single membrane and named for their enzyme producing and degrading hydrogen peroxide. Kaya nga peroxisome. You have your oxidases and your catalases. Your oxidases Okay, oxidize substrates by removing your hydrogen atoms that are transferred to your molecular oxygen, producing now your hydrogen peroxide. And then you have your catalase, which break down or destroys your hydrogen peroxide, which is a potential threat to the cell kasi nga nakakadamage siya. So meron namang yin and yang dito sa ating peroxisome. One that destroys and one that controls your oxidases and catalase. And then you have your cytoskeleton. This determine the shapes of the cell and play an important role in the movements of your organelles. Again, movements of your organelles and your cytoplasmic vesicles. Like yung galing sa RER papunta ng Golgi. Okay, and also, it allows the movement of the entire cells. So maraming klase ng cytoskeleton, no? You have your microtubules, microfilaments like your actin filaments, no? We will discuss that in muscle histology. And then you have your intermediate filaments. And then you have your inclusions. Ito somehow, I think baka bagong ma-review nyo kasi ito yung mga accumulated metabolites or other substances. They have no metabolic activity and they are not enclosed by a membrane. So ang example sa mga inclusions, tandaan, your lipid droplets. So accumulation of your lipid-filling adipocytes. So we can consider one fat cell as a lipid droplet or inclusion. We also have your glycogen granules. It is an aggregate of carbohydrate polymer in which glucose is stored, glycogen granule. Melanin, pigmented deposits, a dark brown granule. And then we have your lipofuscin, favorite ko to. It's a complex mix of material partly derived from your residual bodies after lysosomal digestion. Actually, maraming lipofuscin sa tissue ng liver, okay, because of a lot of lysosomal digestion there. And then we have your hemosiderin. It is a dense brown aggregate of denatured ferritin proteins result from the phagocytosis of your red blood cells. So, nice to know yung mga inclusions, baka matanong. Then, lastly, we have the nucleus. This is the command center of the cell. And it contains the molecular machinery to replicate the DNA, to synthesize and process all types of RNA. Ang component ng nucleus nyo, you have your nuclear envelope. This is the largest structure within the cell. Then you have your chromatin, a mass of DNA, and its associated protein. Then you have your nucleoli, a specialized regions of your chromatin. So, ganun lang kabilis ang pag-review ng ating cellular structure and function. Let's move on to the next topic. So let's discuss now the cell cycle. So the cell cycle is a regular sequence of events that produce a new cell. So meron siyang 4 phases. You have your mitosis, which is divided into your PMAT or prophase, metaphase, anaphase, and telophase. And then yung second, third, and fourth, your G1, S, and G2, collectively they are known as your interphase. And then we have your G0. So your mitosis, this is the period of cell division, and we'll discuss this sa next slide. But let's try to dissect lang your interphase. So you have your G1 here. Okay, your G1 is a period where your cells accumulates the enzymes and nucleotide required for your DNA replication. And then you have your S here. This is the period of your DNA synthesis, characterized now by your DNA replication. There's also histone synthesis and the beginning of your centrosome duplication. And then you have your relatively short period, your S2. Okay? G2. The gap between your DNA duplication and the next mitosis. And this is the period preparation for mitosis. Now we have here G0. This is your quiescence or differentiation. The cell cycle activities here may be temporarily or permanently suspended kung hindi naman kailangang mag-perform ng mitosis. Now, your mitosis again is a period of cell division. Your cell cycle phase that can be routinely distinguished with the light microscope. Kasi merong mga distinct phases yan that I will show you later. Your parent cell divides and each of the 2 daughter cells receives a chromosomal set that is identical to that of the parent cell. Events of your mitosis again is divided into your four major stages beginning with your prophase. Yung prophase nyo, nawawala na yung nucleolus and there's a condensation of your replicated chromatin. Kaya kapag ganito yung formation na nakita, this is your prophase. Your metaphase, and distinct dito is that there's the formation of your equatorial plate. Now your anaphase away, no? Your sister chromatids are being pulled apart. And then lastly, your telophase, which you will notice nagkakaroon na ng cleavage. Hindi po dede, ha? Cleavage ng cell, your cleavage furrow. This is a sign of your cytokinesis or nagde-divide na yung inyong cells. Okay, so that's the quick version of your cell cycle. Remember your PMAT, prophase, metaphase, anaphase, and telophase. Next is your meiosis. This is a specialized process involving two unique and closely associated cell divisions that occurs only in the cells that will form sperm and egg cells. So your sex cells. So ang difference neto, ang cell na po-produce dito are haploid versus sa mitosis na it's identical to the parent cell. So ang meaning neto, you just have one chromosome from each pair present in the body's somatic cells. So let's try to differentiate mitosis versus meiosis. Mitosis is a cell division that produces two diploid cells. Ang meiosis nyo naman involves two cell divisions and produce four haploid cells. Okay, so during meiotic crossing over, new combination of genes are produced. And every haploid cell is genetically unique versus your mitosis, your daughter cells there are identical to the parent cell. Now, let's begin with the four basic types of tissues. Okay? So, ano ba yung mga type of tissues in the body? We have your epithelial, connective, muscle, and nervous. So, if you're going to combine this different type of tissue, you will now form an organ. Kaya kung mapapansin nyo, kapag pag-uusapan na natin yung mga organ system, ang dinadissect lang natin doon ay yung mga epithelial parts, connective components, muscles present, and the nervous component ng organ na yon. Pero this is a nice table showing you the key differences of your different types of tissues, beginning with your epithelial tissue, okay, aggregated polyhedral cells, dikit-dikit sila, and you will understand why, because of the function, covering, absorption, and glandular secretion. Your connective naman, ang extracellular matrix niyan sobrang dami kasi it forms the bulk of the tissue or organ. Okay, so ano ba ang main function ng connective tissue nyo? Support and protection of tissues. Your muscle naman, medyo moderate lang kanyang extracellular matrix, okay? But you have here your elongated contractile cells. And what is the function? Strong contraction and body movement. Then nervous naman, elongated cells with extremely fine processes like your dendrites. Very small din ang amount ng iyong ECM at ang function nito ay transmission of nerve impulses. Very easy lang. Review lang naman ito, guys. Now, let's begin with your epithelial tissue. So, ano ba ang characteristic features of your epithelial tissue? Your shapes and dimensions of epithelial cells are variable. Merong flat, may cuboidal, and may columnar. And depending on the shape, it will serve a different purpose or function. Okay, so epithelial cell nuclei also vary in shape and may be elliptical, oval, okay, you have your spherical and your flattened. Magkakaroon kayo ng clue. Kapag columnar ang cell, more of elongated ang nuclei, oval. Kapag naman squamous ang inyong epithelial cell, flattened nuclei. At kapag naman cuboidal, other term, remember, your pyramidal cells, they have more spherical nuclei. Kaya nga ina-advise ko, when you're trying to observe epithelial cells, and if you're having difficulty kung anong klase siyang type of lining epithelium, try to observe the nuclei of each epithelia. Okay, so you will have an idea kung ano ba siya, squamous, columnar, or cuboidal. Now, your epithelial cells also shows polarity. So, ano ba yung mga polarity na yan? You have your basal pole or your basal surface. This is the region of cell contacting with the extracellular matrix and connective tissue. Ang apical nyo naman on the apex, excuse me, This is the opposite end of your basal surface. And usually, this is one that is facing the lumen or a space. And then, your sides, this is what you call your lateral surface. Okay? So, usually, no, nakikita yan sa cuboidal and columnar cells. Pag nagdikit-dikit, ito yung mga lateral surface. So, again, polarity of the epithelial cells, apical surface on top, basal surface on the bottom, and then lateral surface on the side. Then we have our basement membrane. This is a thin extracellular sheet on which the basal surface of the epithelia rests. Now, your basement membrane is divided into your basal lamina and your reticular lamina. So, yung basement membrane nyo, that is the entire structure beneath the epithelial cells. Ayan usually yung na-observe natin with the light microscope. Now, your basal lamina naman is a fine extracellular layer seen ultrasonically, usually on electron microscope. Okay, at hindi yan nakikita sa microscope. Again, your basement membrane, visible under light microscope, divided into your basal lamina and your reticular lamina. Okay. Now, pag-usapan natin yung mga intracellular adhesions and other junctions. No? Yung parang mga rivet tsaka pandikit ng cell. Paano ba sila nagdidikit-dikit? So, we have here tight junctions or your zonula occludens. Okay? So, they are the most apical of all the junctions and they seal two adjacent cells. Then, we have your adherens or anchoring junction. Other term yan ay zonula adherens, area of a strong cell adhesion and stabilized neighboring tight junctions. Then you have your desmosomes or your macula adherens. Some are anchoring junction. It is a spot-like structure between cells. And then you have your gap junction or nexus, no other term. It is a hole, provides a medium for communication between cells. And actually, this is the structure that is important in the syncytial or synchrony of the contraction of your smooth muscles and of your cardiac muscles. It allows the inter-exchange of your small molecules. And then you have your hemidesmosome. Okay, you attaches your cytoskeleton to the basal lamina. So, para matandaan nyo, no, hemidesmosome to the basal lamina. And then, from the book, you have your focal adhesion. These are your basal anchoring junction found in cells that are moving during epithelial repair or reorganization. So, very important, alam nyo yung mga iba't ibang intracellular adhesion at bakit kapit na kapit sila sa bawat isa. No, ang dami niyan. Now, what are the specialized structure in the apex or in the apical surface of your epithelia? So, you have your microvilli. Okay, your microvilli, they have their actin filaments. They are visible as brush or striated borders in cells lining the small intestine and increases the cell surface area to facilitate absorption. Then, meron din kayong stereocilia. This one naman, it has your microfilaments and actin binding proteins. Well, it also increases the surface area of the cells to facilitate the absorption of molecules. They are much longer pero less motile than your microvilli and found in the lining of the male reproductive tract like your epididymis, your vas deferens, and hair cells of the inner ear. So, stereocilia, tatlo lang naman yan. And then your cilia, it has your microtubules. This is long, highly motile apical structures that are abundant on cuboidal or columnar cells of many epithelium. So, important to differentiate your microvilli, stereocilia, and your cilia. Discuss na natin yung mga different types of epithelia beginning with your simple squamous. This is a single layer of flattened cells with flat nuclei as explained kanina. So, ang distribution neto, saan siya nakikita? Endothelium. This is your lining of the luminal surface of your blood vessels or your heart. And then you have your mesothelium kapag naman ang pinag-uusapan ay mga cavities like in your abdomen. Now, the function of your simple squamous depending on the organ system, pero it facilitates movement of your viscera, secretion of biologically active molecules like in the lining epithelium of your gastrointestinal tract, and then pinocytosis and gas exchange in your respiratory system. So this is an example of your simple squamous epithelium. This is from an endothelium of a capillary. And then we have your simple cuboidal or pyramidal cells. This one naman, square shape ang kanyang cell with spherical nuclei or bilog. Ang distribution nito usually makikita saan? Sa ovaries, your thyroid follicle, tulad nito, no? This is your thyroid follicle. And then you also have your collecting tubules in the kidney, and then some ducts of your salivary glands and pancreas. Ang function ng inyong simple cuboidal, more of covering, medyo makapal na kasi siya, at saka secretion. Ang simple columnar naman, it is taller than wide, okay, with elongated or oval nuclei. Often, ang mga columnar nyo may specialized structures like your cilia and microvilli. Ang distribution ng mga simple columnar epithelium natin is in the colon, di ba, with goblet cell, and small intestine with microvilli and goblet cells. Yung goblet cells natin, ayan yung nagsisecrete ng mucus, ng mucin. Makikita rin siya saan? Sa fallopian tubes with surface cilia. Yung cilia, di ba sinabi natin kanina, highly motile, important in transporting the ovo or the egg cell into the ampulla for fertilization. And then we have your respiratory tract with pseudostratification. And then vas deferens naman, yung pag-usapan natin kanina, may stereocilia. And then your gallbladder, also simple columnar epithelium. Ano ngayon ang function kapag columnar ka na? Protection kasi makapal, lubrication kasi may goblet cell secretion, absorption especially in the intestines, and secretion. Alright? So, this is an example of your columnar epithelium showing you, no, na talagang rectangular, no, taller than wide. Then we have your stratified squamous. Stratified patong-patong, kaya nga 2 or more layers of your flattened cells. Then we have 2 types, no? Your keratinized, yung nagkakalyo, and your non-keratinized. No, usually you're moist, like your vaginal canal. Now, your keratinized stratified squamous or dry, ang kanyang surface cells, wala siyang nucleus and are metabolically inactive. It has a lot of keratin filaments, usually seen in the epidermis. No, ito yung first layer of the skin. And then, ang importance niya, it prevents water loss and protection ng skin. Now, non-keratinized, ang surface cells usually with nucleus and are metabolically active. This is seen in the moist internal cavities like the covering of the cornea, mouth, esophagus, larynx, vagina, anal canal, and this is for protection, secretion, and prevention of water loss. Imagine niyo na lang kung yung mga internal cavities natin nangangalyo, 'di ba? O sa vaginal canal na lang, kung usually ayan ay nagagamit for passage in sexual intercourse, kung nangangalyo yan, napaka-sad experience naman. So, just differentiate the two, the non-keratinizing and keratinizing. O sige nga, tanungin kita, yung mga palms and soles, is it keratinizing or non-keratinizing? Aba naman, very good, it is keratinizing. Kaya nga siya nangangalyo at nangangapal. Now, next is your stratified cuboidal and columnar. This is rare, no, a type of epithelium. Pero usually, ang distribution ng stratified cuboidal epithelium, yung mga naglalay ng excretory ducts like your salivary and sweat glands, including also your ovarian follicles. Ang stratified columnar epithelium, iisa lang, alamin mo na, your conjunctiva. It is patong-patong na columnar epithelium. Again, since we are talking about cuboidal and columnar, it is more of protection and secretion. At ang walang kamatayang nag-iisang favorite mula pa ng med school, malay mo lumabas ngayong board exam, ang iyong transitional epithelium, other term, urothelium. Okay? It is stratified with round dome-shaped superficial cells. At itong mga superficial round dome na to, ang tawag dito ay umbrella cells. Ella. No? Kasi nga, mukha naman talaga siyang payong. Ayan, mukhang payong. Ano ang distribution? Saan nakikita ang urothelium? Syempre naman, most of the urinary tract from the kidneys to the proximal part of the urethra. Okay, later on, when we talk about the male and female reproductive, you will know na yung distal part ng urethra, more of stratified na yun. More of protection ang kailangan doon. Ngayon, ano ang function ng inyong transitional epithelium? It is specialized in distensibility, especially in the bladder. No? Kung mapapansin nyo, kapag full ang bladder, stretch na stretch ang inyong mga umbrella cells. At kapag naman hindi full ang bladder, kakawiwi lang, makikita nyo medyo contracted yung mga yan. Again, please to remember urothelium or transitional epithelium in the urinary tract. Now, this is also important. Your pseudostratified columnar epithelium. These are irregular cells that are all attached to the basement membrane. Kung makikita nyo itong image na to, mukha siyang stratified, no? Patong-patong. Pero in reality, hindi lang pantay-pantay yung mga nucleus natin. And there are other structures here like your goblet cells. Kaya nagmumukha siyang patong-patong. Kaya siya tinawag na pseudostratified. Okay? So usually saan natin nakikita ang pseudostratified columnar epithelial cells in the respiratory tract? Tandaan mo na, hindi ka makakalagpas ng histology kung hindi mo alam ang lining epithelium ng respiratory tract. It is your pseudostratified columnar epithelium with goblet cells. Okay, ngayon, ang function nito, it is heavily ciliated to transport mucus trap particles. Pseudostratified columnar epithelium. Okay? Okay, so talagang quick review tayo, no? Ngayon, pag-usapan naman natin yung mga specialized form ng epithelia. This is known as your glands, okay? So maraming function ng ating mga glands. Pwedeng mag-synthesize, store, and release a lot of substances such as your lipids, proteins, and complex carbohydrates. Now, your lipids, usually these are coming from your adrenal glands, sebaceous glands. Proteins naman, marami yan ang pancreas, like your enzymes, and your mammary glands. Your complex of carbohydrate protein from your salivary glands. And your mammary glands actually can secrete all three substances, no? Your lipids, proteins, and your carbohydrates. Now, cells of your some glands, example, your sweat glands, meron silang konting synthetic activity and mostly they secrete your water and electrolytes from your blood. And then, ang ating mga glands, remember, can be divided into endocrine and exocrine glands. Okay? So let's begin first with your endocrine glands. These are ductless and has no connection with its original epithelium. Releases substances such as your hormones toward your target areas with the receptor for the specific hormone. Alam nyo na yan, for sure, nag-face show na kayo. Has irregular cords and rounded follicles for temporary storage of secretory products. Ano yung mga example niyan? Your pituitary gland, your master gland, okay? And then your adrenal gland, and also your thyroid gland. Now, ang mga exocrine glands naman natin, they are connected with the surface epithelia and transport substances over short distances. Ito na yung may mga ducts. Okay? So, kaya nga ang ating secretion here is via the duct system. It has many small secretory portion and ducts like your pancreas. They have tubular ducts that are lined with epithelium like your salivary gland. No? Example here is your sweat glands, mammary glands, salivary glands, and your intestinal glands. Again, imagine nyo na lang, itong mga glands na to, epithelium pala sila, special form lang. So what are the structural classes of your exocrine glands na muna tayo? We have your simple glands, okay? Meron silang ducts, pero hindi sila nagbabranch. Kaya nga they're very simple, straightforward. So what are the types of your simple glands? Your simple tubular, and then you have here your branch tubular, you have your coiled tubular, you have your acinar or alveolar, no? Pouch-like, and then your branch acinar, marami lang pouch. So these are your simple glands. Now, let's try to discuss it further. Ang simple tubular nyo, they are elongated, simple secretory portion. Has a duct that is usually short. Minsan nga, wala pa. Example nito, intestinal glands, colon mucous glands, and remember, simple tubular crypts of Lieberkühn. We'll discuss that later sa ating digestive system. And then you have your branch tubular here. Okay, you have your several long secretory portion that drain into a single duct. Example niyan, in the uterus and in the stomach. Ang coiled tubular, long and coiled. O, saan makikita? coiled sweat glands. Ang asciner alveolar nyo, rounded sac-like secretory portion ito, no? Usually itong orange na ito, and then they will secrete it towards to the duct. So ito from around sac-like secretory portion, usually sample niyan, small mucus gland lining the urethra, and then your branch ascinar, multiple sac-like secretory parts, and then it will go into your duct. This is an example of your skin sebaceous glands. Okay, so try to remember lang yung mga sample. Now, your compound glands naman, mas pina-complex. Mas pinarami ang branching. Okay, have ducts from several secretory units that converge into a larger duct. Have 2 or more branches. So, you have your compound tubular. Okay, makikita siya saan? Brunner in the duodenum. Buzzwords na yon. Si paring Brunner, no, sa duodenum. Now, your asciner alveolar naman, it's in your exocrine pancreas. Exocrine, kasi iba pa yung endocrine pancreas. And then your tubulo-ascinar in your salivary glands. Okay? So, those are your structural classes of your exocrine glands. Now, what are the types of exocrine glands based on their mode of secretion? First, we have your merocrine glands. Secrete substances via exocytosis from membrane-bound vesicles or secretory granules. Most common method of protein or glycoprotein secretion. Most exocrine glands are merocrine, kaya nga siya most common. Example, your salivary glands. Now, you can further categorize the secretory products whether it is serous or mucus, no? Dito sikat na sikat yung ating mga sublingual glands, mandibular and parotid gland. Now, your serous synthesizes non-glycosylated proteins. Example, your digestive enzymes. They have well-developed RER and Golgi complexes that are filled apically with secretory granules. And then they stain immensely. Kaya yung serous talagang blue na blue yan. Example niyan, acini of the pancreas and parotid. And later on, you will know that your parotid gland is purely serous ang kanyang secretion. Okay, ito yung importance. That's why I want to emphasize yung mga basic muna ng histo. So at least you will appreciate yung mga buzzwords, yung mga must know, yung mga tip, yung mga unique with the different organ system. And then, syempre, kung may serous ka, may mucus ka. Ito namang mucus, heavily glycosylated proteins called your mucins. Kaya malapot-lapot. Meron ding RER and Golgi complexes filled with secretory granules. Now, when your mucins are released from the cell, they become hydrated and form a layer of mucus. Okay? They stain poorly due to the washed hydrophilic mucus. Example, best example ng mucus na nagsisecrete ng mucin, your goblet cells, no, na nakikita saan? Respiratory lining, no? Or lining epithelium of the respiratory tract. Siyempre, i-combine mo yung mucus and serous, you have your mix, seromucus. So, yung mga ibang salivary glands are mixed seromucus glands. You will know kung ano yon, no? May purely serous pero mix, may purely mucus pero mix. This is your sublingual and mandibular gland. Okay? So, ayan ang example, submandibular gland. Okay? Now, you have your holocrine glands. Cells accumulate substances resulting to their enlargement and undergo terminal differentiation. Secrete substances via complete cell destruction where products and cell debris are released into the lumen. No? Mololo naman itong holocrine. Mololo kasi may pasabog. Mololo, holocrine. Example nito, sebaceous glands of your hair follicles. Then your apocrine glands accumulate at the apical end of the cell, secrete substances by loss of membrane enclosed apical cytoplasm, usually containing one or more lipid droplets, major product of your apocrine secretion. Example, tandaan mo na, mammary gland, ceruminous glands, yung mga apo mo, saan ba dumidede? Sa dede, mammary gland, na mga matutuli, ceruminous glands. So, sa apo, dumidedeng matutuli. Para lang matandaan nyo na. Alright? Apocrine glands. Now, in addition, I just wanted to emphasize also your myoepithelial cell. Epithelium siya, yes, pero may capacity to contract. These are your contractile myoepithelial cells, usually at the basal ends of your secretory cells. Kasi nga naman, paano mo mamimilk or mailalabas ang mga secretions kung walang magmimilk magko-contract, no? So, since ito ay may contractile property, alam mo na ito ay may actin, filament, and myosin. So, the strong contraction of your myoepithelial cell helps to propel the secretory products from the acynus to the duct system. Okay? So, ayun ang ating myoepithelial cell. Ang endocrine glands mo, walang myoepithelial cells kasi nga naman, directly na yan saan? Sa blood vessel or sa dugo na kagad. So, hindi mo na kailangan ng ducts kasi nga ductless. Alright? So, let's move on to the next type of tissue. Tapos na tayo sa epithelium, guys. Congratulations. I'm so proud of you. Yan. Dahil dyan, magbawas ka muna ng epithelium lining. Okay? Sige, connective tissue. Your connective tissue provides a matrix that supports and physically connects other tissues and cells to form the organs of the body. Kaya nga kanina, doon sa intro ko, di ba? Usually, siya yung may abundant ECMs. Now, your interstitial fluid of your connective tissue gives metabolic supports to cells as medium for diffusion of nutrients and waste products. So, ang cells ng ating connective tissue, marami-rami yan. Okay? Pero ang pinaka parang resident or sikat dito is the fibroblasts. These are the key cells in your connective tissue. Your fibroblasts originate locally from your mesenchymal cells and are permanent resident of the connective tissue. Now, may other cells in the connective tissue. Meron kang macrophage, plasma cell, mast cell. And yung mga tatlong yan, ako, iisa lang pinanggalingan yan sa bone marrow. No? You will realize na ano lang sila, mga migrating cells. Your white blood cells, your leukocytes, meron din yan sa connective tissue, pero ang tawag sa kanila ay transient cells. Kasi nga, they usually visit lang the cell depending on the needed function of it. For example, if there's inflammation, there will be chemotaxis, diapedesis outside from the blood vessel going to the inflamed tissue. And usually, they die sa form of your apoptosis or cell death. Remember, cytochrome C from mitochondria, no? That is also related to your apoptosis or programmed cell death. Again, ang mga cells natin, marami. Fibroblasts, macrophage, plasma cells, and mast cells. Pero ano lang yung permanent na residente ng itong tissue na to? Very good, your fibroblasts. So, speaking of your fibroblasts, again, it is the most common cell in the connective tissue, correct? Produce and maintain most of the tissue's extracellular component. Ano nga ba kasi ang ginagawa ni fibroblast? It synthesizes and secretes our collagen. Siyempre, kung ikaw ang most common cell, ang collagen naman ang most abundant protein of the body. No? Second, syempre, ang fibroblast gumagawa din ng elastin, but not much. So, all components of the ECM is derived from fibroblasts. Excuse me, ayan, parang may fibroblast na yung lalamunan ko. Joke lang. Ayan, okay? So, fibroblast. So, tignan natin tong picture na to para ma-review, no? Pinag-usapan na natin yung mga resident cells. You have your mesenchymal cell na pinagmulan ni fibroblast. And then, you have your adipocyte. Inclusion lang yan, lipid droplet. Kaya may makikita ka dyan. And then your macrophage, no, coming from the bone marrow, actually monocyte kapag nasa bloodstream. Okay? So, ayan ang ating fibroblast. I-differentiate lang natin, baka lumabas. Ano yung diferensya ng fibroblast sa fibrocyte? Yung fibroblast, ayan yung active cell. Pero kapag ikaw ay pagod na at namamahinga, yung fibroblast nyo, pwede siya maging fibrocyte. Okay? Medyo pumayat na fibroblast na yan. Now, syempre, may adipocytes, no, fat cells ito. Nakikita rin siya sa connective tissue. And they are also mesenchymally derived. And they are specialized for what? Syempre, storage of lipid. No? And later on, kapag pinag-usapan natin ng adipose tissue, it is a specialized type of connective tissue. Malalaman nyo ng function niya is, one of it is producing heat. Okay? Now, Let's try to discuss yung macrophage and the mononuclear phagocyte system. Very important to, guys. Macrophage, they have highly developed phagocytic ability. No, kumakain sila depende kung ano yung nandoon. Virus, bacteria. They are specialized in the turnover of protein fibers and removal of your apoptotic cells, especially your leukocytes, tissue debris, or other particulate matter material, being especially abundant at site of inflammation. Now, ang tawag minsan sa kanila ng mga pathologists ay histiocytes. Nice to know. Derived again from the precursor cell of your monocyte that is circulating in the blood. That is your macrophage. So, ito yung ating mononuclear phagocyte system. High-yield ito, guys, kasi nga, yung iyong monocyte, kapag pumunta na siya sa connective tissue or tissue, ang pangalan niya lang ay macrophage. At ang ating mga macrophage, depending on the area of the organ system, nagbabago lang sila ng pangalan. Okay? So again, important, no? Starting point natin, monocyte, major location in the bloodstream. Ang function niya, precursor ng macrophage. Ang macrophage natin, marami yan. Connective tissue, lymphoid organs, lungs, bone marrow, pleural and peritoneal cavity. Ang function niya, marami. Production of cytokines, chemotactic factors, participation in the inflammation for phagocytosis, antigen processing, and presentation. Ngayon, ang macrophage ng inyong liver, specifically in the perisinusoidal area, it's your Kupffer cell. Kupffer cell, liver. Pag ang monocyte naglamyerda pumunta sa utak, it will become the macrophage na microglial cell. Now, kapag tumambay sa epidermis of the skin, it's your Langerhans cell. And kapag naman sa lymph nodes or spleen, it is your dendritic cell. Pag sa bone, tandaan nyo to, important, your osteoclast. Grabe, no? Yung osteoclast pala ay from the monocyte. Yes, di ba nga? Anong alam natin sa physiology? Osteoclast, C, taga-sira ng bone, no? So, kung hindi nyo pa alam yung bone resorption, ako, review. And then you have your multinuclear giant cell. This is in connective tissue under various pathological conditions. Later on, no, kapag naging multinuclear giant cell, alam nyo na kung ano ang buzzword na sakit siya. Okay, so important here, no, natatanong yan lagi. Meron din dito, not included, in the lungs, it's what you call your dust cell. Okay, again, pakisulat na lang ha, dust cell as in D-U-S-T, your macrophage in the respiratory system. Now, meron pa ring cells ang inyong connective tissue, your mast cell. Nice. Important to know pala, hindi nice to know. It is a function in the localized release of many bioactive substances important where? In inflammation, immunity, and tissue repair. Now, occurring in your connective tissue of many organs, your muscles are numerous, malapit sa blood vessels, especially in the skin and mesenteries. Okay, and then in the tissue that lines your digestive and respiratory tract, these are your mucosal mast cells. They release a lot of stored granules, okay, and usually kapag nag-release yan, you will have immediate hypersensitivity reaction. Kaya nga kung mapapansin nyo, di ba, kapag may mga hypersensitivity reaction tayo sa emergency room, yung skin nyo, maraming mga wheals, bumps, because mas marami nga sila sa skin. Okay? Now, kapag hindi na-contain yung inyong hypersensitivity reaction, it can go to your anaphylactic shock. This is a dramatic example of your hypersensitivity reaction. This is potentially fatal. Okay? And what is the treatment? Yes, epinephrine, 0.5 ml intramuscularly. Okay? And then important din, malaman ng plasma cells. These are your lymphocyte-derived antibody-producing cells. Doc, tandaan mo na, ang plasma cells na nagpo-produce ng antibodies. Ano ba yung mga antibodies mo? Your IgG, IgA, IgM, IgE, IgD. Pero sa histology, ang madalas na ginagamit nila is your clock-phased appearance. Kasi kung mapapansin nyo yung nucleus, no? Parang may mga time. Yung 12, 3, 6, and 9. Okay, so pag narinig ang word na clock phase appearance ang papasok sa iyo, plasma cells. They are derived from your B cells. Now, we also have your leukocytes, also known as your white blood cells. Normally comprise a population of wandering cells in the connective tissue, no, beside your macrophages and plasma cells. Galing pa rin sila sa circulating blood cells. They leave the blood by migrating between the endothelial cells. That's what you call your diapedesis. And enter your connective tissue for the response na kailangan. For example, inflammation. Other than that, napag-usapan na natin itong mga resident cells, inisa-isa ko, wala akong inutang, no? Punta naman tayo sa extracellular matrix. Here, we have the fibers, and these are the fibrous components of a connective tissue. They are elongated structures formed from proteins that polymerize after secretion from your fibroblasts. Okay? So, there are three main types of fibers. You have your collagen, reticular, and elastic fibers. Your collagen and reticular fibers are formed by proteins of the collagen family. Pero ang elastic fibers, they are composed mainly of elastin protein. Again, collagen to collagen reticular fibers, elastic fiber from elastin protein. Okay, so ang collagen natin is the key elements of all connective tissue, most abundant protein. Okay, categorized into the following. You have your fibril collagen, network or sheet-forming collagen, and your linking anchoring collagens. So, this is a summary of all the types of collagen. Pero syempre, ang pinaka-importante lang naman na madalas tinatanong, no? Okay, this one. Your type 1 bone, type 2 cartilage, type 3 reticulin, and type 4 under the floor basement membrane. So these are your types of collagen. Pero lately, no, tandaan na lang din natin itong 5, okay? Fetal tissue, placenta, skin, bone, interstitial tissues. And then 7, importante din kasi malabasan. Ayun yung mga anchoring proteins nyo. Okay, anchoring basal lamina to reticular lamina. Your 7. Pero importante to, hindi ka masi-zero dito, lagi itong nagagamit. The next, your reticular fibers found in the delicate city of many organs, excuse me, notably in the immune system, consists mainly of what? Type 3, reticulin. And then you have your elastic fibers, okay? They have rubber-like, kaya nga elastic, elastin, okay? Usually nakikita yan sa stroma of the lungs, okay? Yung mga kailangan ma-stretch, mag-distend, tapos kailangan bumalik into the original shape. Tapos, ang ating mga large blood vessels, kung mapapansin nyo, they are also elastic because they have what you call the elastic lamella in the vascular wall. Okay, after your fibers, protein fibers, punta na tayo sa last, your ground substance. Ano ba yung ground substance na yan? Okay, it is a highly hydrated component of your ECM. Transparent, complex mixture of the three major kinds of macromolecules. Kaya pag natanong ano yung mga components ng ground substance, you have your GAGs, your glycosaminoglycans, you have your proteoglycans, and your multi-adhesive glycoprotein. Sa interest of time, no, I won't be discussing one by one yan. Importante lang, alam nyo na ayan ay component ng ground substance. And ground substance or your GS, filling the space between the cells and fibers in connective tissue, and it allows the diffusion of small molecules, and because it is malapot or viscous, it also acts as both a lubricant and a barrier to the penetration of invaders. So as a form of protection. Okay, now there are different types of connective tissue. Okay, pwedeng loose or dense. Depende sa amount ng collagen present. Kapag narinig nyo yung loose connective tissue, less ang collagen. Pero pag sinabi mong dense connective tissue, it is a lot of collagen. So different combination and densities of the cells, fibers, and other ECM components produce a graded variation in histological structure within connective tissue. Diba na-discuss ko sa inyo yung component ng CT, may mga cells, may fibers, may ground substance. Depende kung anong combination nun, we can have different types of connective tissue. So i-discuss na natin agad-agad, wala nang patumpik-tumpik, karak-karaka, loose connective tissue. It is common forming a layer beneath the epithelial lining of many organs and filling the space between fibers of muscles and nerves. Ano ang other term? Tandaan mo na, areolar tissue is your loose connective tissue. Your collagen fibers predominate, but elastic and reticular fibers are also present. Okay, moderate amount of your ground substance and has a delicate consistency. It is flexible and not very resistant to stress. That is your loose connective tissue or areolar tissue. Then we have your dense connective tissue. Similar component kay loose, pero mas konti ang cells. Okay? Well, konti ang cells ng loose. Pero here, we have a lot of fibroblasts. So, syempre, kung maraming fibroblasts, ano bang pinoproduce niyan? Corrected by, and yours truly, collagen. Okay, clear predominance of your bundled type 1 collagen over ground substance. Now, the abundance of your collagen protects your organs and strengthen them structurally. Syempre, kung may dense, no, irregular, merong dense irregular. So we can actually classify your dense connective tissue into two types, irregular and regular. Okay? So dito makikita nyo very irregular yung ating presentation ng ating mga fibroblasts, no? So bundles of collagen fibers or fibers here appears randomly interwoven with no definite orientation. Okay, saan nakikita ang dense irregular? Deep dermis layer of the skin, and then capsules surrounding most organs. Your dense irregular. And then we have your dense regular. Ayan, very, very smooth, no? Parallel, aligned ang ating mga fibroblasts and collagen bundles. This is great for repeated stresses. So, very good for protection. Example, saan? Tendons, aponeurosis, and ligaments. Yung mga yan, dense regular connective tissue. Again, going back, pag dense irregular, capsules of the organs and deep dermis layer of the skin. And then we have your reticular tissue. Abundant fiber of type 3 collagen. O, diba? Paulit-ulit, type 3 collagen. Delicate network that supports various type of cells. So, this collagen is also known as your reticulin and is produced by your modified fibroblasts called reticular cells. Okay, bagong ano tayo ha? Bagong word, reticular cells produced your reticulin. Example ng reticular tissue nyo, bone marrow, lymph node, and spleen. Meron din tayong mucoid tissue. Basta pag narinig nyo ang umbilical cord, tapos Wharton's jelly, wala nang usap-usap dyan. This is your mucoid tissue. And your mucoid tissue is abundant with ground substance. No? Ang component niyan mostly is your hyaluronan. Okay, so that's your different types of connective tissue. Let's move on to the next topic, this time adipose tissue. Guys, tandaan nyo ha, ang adipose tissue, under pa rin siya ng connective tissue. This is a specialized form of connective tissue, your adipose tissue. So it is a connective tissue in which fat-storing cells or your adipocytes predominate. It's called your adipose tissue. So again, adipose for tissue, pag cell naman, adipocytes. They storage of your neutral fats, chiefly your triglycerides. And they are the key regulators of overall energy metabolism and thermal insulator of our body. There are two types of adipose tissue. May white and then may brown. Let's begin with your white adipose tissue. Ang other term neto ay unilocular. So kung mapapansin nyo, unilocular lang siya. And then it has a large droplet of triglyceride. Okay? Ngayon, minsan ang tawag sa cell ng white adipose tissue ay your signet ring appearance. Kasi mukha siyang signet ring. Yan. Kung makikita nyo, yung large droplet ng lipid dito, dinidisplace niya yung nucleus. Okay? So that's your white adipose tissue. And then we have your brown adipose tissue. Ang principal function nito ng brown ay heat production and warming of the blood. Kaya nga sa mga newborn, okay, marami-rami ang brown tissue kasi nga it is a protective factor. Kasi wala naman tayong behavioral Pag ang mga newborn, di ba, behavioral pattern nila, kapag giniginaw, hindi naman kukuha ng kumot yan, be, or papatayin yung aircon kasi nga newborn. Kaya nagko-concept compensate with the brown adipose tissue. So, it release and warms up the blood. Saan nakikita ang inyong brown adipose tissue? Sa mga newborn, sa neck, sa shoulder, and sa back. Yung mga exposed usually, no? And then sa adult, around the kidneys, adrenal glands, aorta, and mediastinum. Now, when you grow, kapag lumalaki na, nababawasan na rin ang brown adipose tissue. Okay, and your brown adipose tissue, it has a lot of your mitochondria. That's why mukha siyang brown. Okay? And then, kung ang tawag sa white adipose tissue ay unilocular, ang brown adipose tissue naman ay multilocular. Okay, tingnan nyo, marami ang mga droplets, kaya siya multilocular. Ito naman, unilocular. Sorry, ito pala. Itong beige pala, itong tinuturo ko. That's intermediate between brown and white. Ito yung unilocular, isa lang. Now, since na pre-empt ko na kayo, yung beige adipose tissue naman, intermediate between white and brown. Ano ang magandang chismis kay beige? It has the capacity to change reversibly, okay, depending on the adaptation that we need. So for example, your beige, kung kailangan mag-produce pa ng more heat, like you're in a cold or cool environment, it can transform into your brown adipocytes and can begin releasing heat. So that's fast. Ganun lang kabilis ang adipose tissue. Punta naman tayo sa susunod na specialized form of connective tissue, your cartilage. Okay? Your cartilage is tough, durable. It is from a connective tissue characterized by your extracellular matrix with high concentrations of the component of your ground substance, your GAGs, your glycosaminoglycans, and your proteoglycans, interacting now with your collagen and elastic fiber. Kaya nga medyo durable tapos elastic because of your elastic fibers. They have firm consistency that can bear the mechanical stresses without permanent distortion. Kaya nga, di ba, for example, yung pina, yung ating ear, no, nagagalaw natin, bumabalik sa original shape niya. It provides a cushioning and sliding regions, especially within the skeletal joints. And your cartilage is the one that guides the development and growth of long bones, no, your epiphyseal plate, before and after birth. Now, anong tawag mo sa mga cells ng inyong cartilage? It's your chondrocytes, and they are embedded in your ECM. Your chondrocytes synthesize and maintain all ECM components and are located in the matrix called lacuna. So, itong mga matrix na ito, itong mga cavities na to, this is what are called lacunae. No, inside of that, you have your cells of the cartilage, chondrocytes. Now, yung mga immature cells na chondrocytes, ang tawag sa kanila, chondroblasts. So, for now, dapat may idea ka na kapag mga immature cells, mga blast ang tawag sa kanila, no? Osteoblasts, lymphoblasts, chondroblasts, ayan. Now, ang blood supply, important to, very, very important concept. All types of cartilage lack vascular supplies, and your chondrocyte receive nutrients by diffusion from capillaries in surrounding connective tissue, no, like your perichondrium. Your cartilage also lacks nerves. Okay, again, walang vascular supply, umaasa lang kay perichondrium. Now, let's talk about your perichondrium. Ito yung perichondrium nyo on top of the cartilage. Okay, it is a sheet dense connective tissue. Pansin nyo naman, di ba? Yung kanyang formation, dense na dense talaga. It is an interface between the cartilage and end of the tissues by the cartilage. Your perichondrium, ito yung structure na nag-harbor ng blood supply, serving the cartilage, no, a blood supply. Now, your articular cartilage, unique siya kasi, di ba, your articular cartilage, especially in your long bones, cover the end of your bones with movable joints. And kapag nag-erode, na nagkakaroon ng arthritic degeneration, this is your articular cartilage. They lack perichondrium, ang mga articular cartilage. Okay? Doc, sabi mo, sa perichondrium lang galing yung nutrients. Well, kapag sa mga articular joints, nanggagaling siya sa synovial fluid. Again, articular cartilage, no perichondrium, nutrients from synovial fluid. So there are three types of cartilage. You have your hyaline. Okay, your hyaline is the most common of the three types. It is homogeneous and semi-transparent in the fresh state. In adults, tandaan nyo na itong mga area ha, ito yung importante. Ang hyaline cartilage, located siya sa surface of your movable joints, walls of your larger respiratory passage. So, ang nose, larynx, trachea, bronchi, hyaline yan. Laging tinatanong your trachea, hyaline cartilage. Your ventral ends of the ribs, which is an articulation to the sternum, hyaline yan. Epiphyseal plates of long bones, hyaline yan. And in the embryo, hyaline cartilage is the temporary skeleton that is gradually replaced by bone. Now, your hyaline cartilage cells metabolize glucose mainly by anaerobic glycolysis kasi nga walang direct blood supply. Again, hyaline cartilage. Now, we have your elastic cartilage. It is essentially similar to your hyaline cartilage, except that it contains an abundant network of elastic fibers, kaya siya elastic. No, saan siya nakikita? Auricle of the ear, walls of the external auditory canals, your epiglottis, the one that covers your trachea, and then your auditory or eustachian tube and your upper respiratory tract. Lahat yan, elastic cartilage. It is more flexible than your hyaline cartilage. Ang pinakalas, yung pinakamatibay is your fibrocartilage, fibrous cartilage, no? And usually it is found in your intervertebral disc, tandaan nyo yan, your attachment of certain ligaments, and your pubic symphysis. Ayan ay fibrocartilage. It is tough, may cushioning support, pero wala siyang distinct surrounding perichondrium, no? In the fibrocartilage. Now, let's move on to the bone. A specialized connective tissue pa din. Dami namang specialized connective tissue. Okay? It is composed of your extracellular bone matrix. Main function, mechanical, metabolic, and support of the body. It protects our vital organs, especially in the brain and in the thoracic cavity. And encloses internal or medullary cavities, which is your bone marrow, where blood cells are produced, where your monocytes are produced. No, it is also a reservoir of your calcium, phosphate, and other ions. Your bone is important in locomotion, in skeletal muscle contraction, and provide solid support for the body. Na important lang, ma-review lang tayo konti sa components ng bone. No, you have your canaliculi. Your canaliculi, this one, okay? Okay, it's a very thin cylindrical space. Ayan yung nagpa-facilitate ng exchange between one osteocytes to another. And also, it is a conduit for your blood capillaries. Then you have your endosteum naman. Endosteum, layers of connective tissue in the internal surface. So, internal surface of the bone, so zoom in lang tayo, this is your endosteum. Okay, and then ang outer naman, external surface, is your periosteum. Okay, so important lang, vocab natin, canaliculi, endosteum inside, periosteum externally. Now, an important cell in the bone is your osteoblasts. It is from your mesenchymal stem cells, like your fibroblasts. They produce a lot of components like your type 1 collagen fibers. Remember, type 1 bone, your proteoglycans, no, part of your ground substance, and then you have your osteonectin, your matricellular glycoprotein. Now, your osteoblast is also responsible for the deposition of the inorganic components. And your osteoblast, as an immature bone cell, it will differentiate into your bone cell, your osteocytes. And usually, they form a single layer of cuboidal cell. So, this is your osteoblast, your OB. No? Papansinin nyo, cuboidal siya in shape. This is your osteoblast. Okay? Now, you have your osteocytes. This is the most abundant cells in the bone. They come from your osteoblasts, and they are located like your chondrocyte inside the lacuna. Okay, so this is your osteocyte, and the cavity here is your lacuna. Your bone cells, your osteocytes, detect mechanical load, and they detect stress or fatigue-induced microdamage. Tapos ito yung mga canaliculi nyo. Ito osteocyte, yung mga yan. Now, your osteoclast, sinabi ko na to kanina, di ba? It's from your monocyte. It is a very large multinucleated motile cells. This is your osteoclast. In comparison, no? In comparison to your osteocyte and your osteoblast, malaki talaga siya. And kung ang chondrocyte may lakuna, kung ang osteocyte ay may lakuna, syempre hindi magpapatalo ang osteoclast. Masosyal. House-shaped lakuna naman siya. Okay? Ayan ang kanyang area kung saan siya makikita. Your house-shaped lacuna or lacunae. Now, your bone matrix, it has two types, your inorganic and organic. Remember, di ba? Inorganic components coming from your osteoblasts. So, about 50% of the dry weight of the bone matrix is inorganic. So, remember this buzzword. Your calcium hydroxyapatite is the most abundant inorganic component of the bone matrix. Well, nice to know may bicarbonate, potassium, sodium ions, and non-crystalline calcium phosphate. Now, your organic, since it is collagen, type 1 bone, collagen, 90% type 1. May mga small proteoglycans, may osteonectin ka na sinabi ko na kanina. Remember lang yung osteocalcine, calcium binding protein siya. And then phosphatases from matrix vesicles that promotes calcification. Kaya tumitigas yung ating extracellular matrix. Inorganic and organic. Now, we have two types ng bone, your compact bone and your cancellous bone. Yung compact bone is also known as your cortical bone. It is a dense area, obvious naman, and this is usually 80% of the total bone mass. Ang cancellous bone, ang other term niya ay trabecular bone or spongy bone. Kasi mukha naman talaga siyang sponge, corrected by? And it's in the deeper areas of the bone with numerous interconnecting cavities. And since ang 80% ay compact bone, the remaining na 20 is your cancellous bone. Now, we have your woven versus lamellar bone. Ang woven bone, these are your immature bone. Other term niya, primary bone, bundle bone. This is newly calcified. Okay, ito yung mga usually na kapag nag-heal yung fractured bone, no, usually start with woven bone. Ang lamellar bone mo naman is also known as your mature bone or secondary bone. It is remodeled from your woven bone. And all normal regions of adult bone is made of your lamellar bone. Okay? Laban tayo guys sa konti lang naman ito. And then we have your osteogenesis. Okay? So we have two types of creation of your bone. Your intramembranous ossification and your endochondral ossification. Tandaan nyo, two types. Yung intramembranous, no, your osteoblasts differentiate directly from condensed sheets of embryonic mesenchymal tissues and begin secreting osteoid. So, intramembranous from your osteoblast. Ang inyong endochondral, from the word chondral, no, cartilage, your pre-existing matrix of your hyaline cartilage is invaded and eroded by your osteoblasts, which then begin osteoid production. So, para hindi kayo malito, ang intramembranous, sariling sikap si osteoblast. Pero si endochondral, ginamit niya yung iyong matrix ng hyaline cartilage to produce your osteoid. Okay? Now, this is a very important structure in your bone, your osteon or your Haversian system. Okay? This is a complex na structure of your concentric lamella. So, pabilog lang na lamellation. No? So, you have here your central canal, then you have your osteocytes. Itong mga lamella, ayan yung mga calcified matrix nyo na paikot lang. Okay? So usually, ito ay compact bone. This is your osteon or Haversian system. Now, we have our epiphyseal growth plate. Okay? Or your epiphyseal cartilage. Diba kanina sinabi ko sa cartilage, important for growth, bone and development. This is responsible, no, yung epiphyseal plate natin for bone growth. Okay, kaya nga ma-observe to sa pediatric patient. Usually, di ba, we try to age our patient through x-ray din. Kapag absent na yung epiphyseal plate, so wala nang capacity to grow yon. So let's just try to dissect further yung epiphyseal growth plate at baka matanong sa inyo. It has 5 different zones. Okay, syempre, lagi namang beginning niyan ay zone of reserve or resting cartilage. Usually, you have a normal or typical hyaline cartilage. And then, magpaparami yung mga yan, kaya ang tawag ay zone of proliferation. So, syempre, marami siyang cartilage to, type 2 collagen. Okay? where your chondroblasts now are proliferating. Kaya nga siya zone of proliferation. Siyempre, meron kang zone of hypertrophy. Magpapalaki na yung inyong mga chondroblasts and somehow they will differentiate now into your chondrocyte. Okay? Then after that, you have your zone of calcified cartilage. Okay, magpapatigas na. Okay, your chondrocytes now will undergo apoptosis. They will release now your matrix vesicles and your osteocalcine, your calcium binding proteins to begin the calcification of the matrix and the formation of your hydroxyapatite crystal. Okay, dito yun sa calcified cartilage, tumitigas na. And then your zone of ossification, where blood vessels and your osteoblasts now invade. Capillaries and your osteoprogenitor cells invade now vacant chondrocytic lacuna. Okay, and then there will be the osteoblasts settling in the layer over the spicules of calcified cartilage matrix, which then will secrete your osteoid. It will become woven bone or primary bone to become remodeled to become your secondary bone or mature bone, your lamellar bone. So that's how your osteogenesis happens. So that's the end of the series of connective tissue. We will move on to the next topic, your nervous tissue and the nervous system. Okay, so ngayon pag-usapan natin ang nervous tissue and the nervous system. So alam naman natin, di ba, that the cell here in the nervous tissue is what you call your neurons. Review lang, ang tawag sa cell membrane ng ating neurons ay neurolemma. Okay, and this is a functional unit of the nervous system, your neurons. So, different parts of the neurons, beginning with your cell body, soma, or your pericardion. It contains the nucleus, serve as a synthetic and trophic center for the entire neuron, and most of the cell bodies are in contact with a great number of your nerve endings. So, most of the cell bodies make up the gray matter and is found peripherally outer in the brain and deep inner in the spinal cord. Kaya nga ang tawag sa gray matter ay gray because of the darkly stained part of the soma or the pericardion. Now, important note here is your nasal bodies. These are your chromatophilic substances. These are large masses or regions with concentrated RER and polyribosomes in your cell body. Buzzwords, nasal bodies, saan makikita? Cell body or in the neurons. Now we have our axons. Your axons transmit impulses away from the cell body and they generally branch less profusely. No? So ano ba yung mga components na important? We have your axon hillock here. It is pyramidal in shape where the axon originates. Then we have the axoplasm. This is just the cytoplasm, the contents of the axon. And then we have the collaterals, okay, here. Okay, so this is the branches of axons as found in interneurons and some motor neurons. Then we have the terminal button here magnified. This is your presynaptic axon terminal. And usually ito yung content kung saan magkakaroon ng release of your neurotransmitters. And then you have your neurolemal sheath. Now in the peripheral nervous system, it is your Schwann cells. And in the central nervous system, it is your oligodendrocytes. And then you have your myelin. It is a compacted layer of cell membrane internal to your neurolemal sheath. Alright, so important here, no, tandaan natin Schwann cells, S sa labas, oligodendrocyte, CNS sa loob, oligolobe, oligo, loob. Now, we have different types of axonal transport. Very important here is your anterograde transport or forward transport. So, ang involved here is your kinesins. No? Movement from the cell body through the axonal microtubules via your kinesin to the synaptic terminals or in the terminal button. Meron namang backward transport. This is your retrograde transport. Movement from the periphery through the axonal microtubules via your dynein to the cell body. So, kinesin away and then dynein backward. Remember that. So dendrites naman, another part of your neuron, it is a principal signal reception and processing sites. They are short, small processes emerging and branching off the soma or the cell body. Ano ang characteristics nito? Tandaan, merong extensive arborization or branching. Mas marami siyang branches versus your axon na may collaterals lang. Meron ding dendritic spine, okay? Where, pag tinanong, It is where most of the synapses occur and important for neural plasticity. When we say neural plasticity, it's the capacity of the nervous system to modify itself in response to experience and injury. Now we also have glial cells. They support neuronal survival and activities. They are 10 times more abundant than your neurons. And there are 6 kinds of your glial cells. 4 in the CNS and 2 in the peripheral nervous system. So yung mga nasa CNS natin, no, your oligodendrocyte, production, ang main function niya is myelin production. Ang astrocyte naman, CNS din, structural and metabolic support of neurons. Ependymal cells, naku, pag narinig nyo to, dapat tapos na ang usapan. Makikita siya saan? Ventricles and central canal of CNS. Important in the production and movement of your CSF or cerebrospinal fluid. Microglia, as discussed earlier, from part of the mononuclear phagocyte system, it is from the bone marrow. Okay, CNS din siya located for defense and immune-related activity. Schwann cell, S sa labas, kaya nga sa PNS located, myelin production pa din. And then you have your satellite cells, peripheral ganglia, for structural and metabolic support for neuronal cell bodies. Again, 6 kinds of glial cells, 4 in the CNS, 2 in the PNS. Remember that. Okay, so your CNS is a major structure comprising ang components ng CNS is your cerebrum, your cerebellum, and your spinal cord. It is completely covered by your tissue layers or meninges. No, reviewing, no, na-discuss na yan ni Dr. Jed Lianes, no, sa head. It contains very little collagen ang ating CNS tissue and it is really soft and easily damaged. That's why napag-usapan natin sa bone na it protects, no, yung mga internal organs like your brain. Now, your gray matter, again, is made of your cell bodies. Your white matter, made out of your myelinated axons, thus lighter in color. Remember that. Now, let's talk about your cerebral cortex. Neurons of the cerebral cortex can be divided into your 5 different morphological types. No? Syempre, halatang-halata yung pula kasi natanong na yan. Let's begin with your pyramidal cells. No? Pyramidal shape. This is different between your pyramidal cell or cuboidal cell ng epithelium, ha? So, let's try to contextualize kung nasang area kayo. Pag nasa cerebral cortex, pyramidal cells, neuron ito. Okay, so it's in the 5th or ganglionic layer of the neocortex. Now, your BET cells, largest pyramidal cells in the motor cortex. BET cells, malaki sa motor cortex. And then we have your stellate granule cells. We have your cells of Martinotti. These are small polygonal cells usually found in the superficial layer. Then meron kang fusiform cells and then the horizontal cells of Cajal. Important lang na alam nyo na that there are 5 different morphological types. Pero ang highly testable here is your BET cells, pyramidal cells. Now your cerebellum, okay, coordinates your muscular activity and maintains posture and equilibrium. It has a thick outer molecular layer. And then we have a thin middle layer, meron kang mga Purkinje cells. And then the thicker inner granular layer, very small, densely packed neurons and little neuropil. Okay, so again, Purkinje cells, saan nakikita? Previous question, cerebellum, Purkinje, specifically in the middle layer. Now, spinal cord, very easy lang naman. Because you can notice in the periphery, it's white matter because of the myelination of the axon. And in the middle, forming a butterfly shape or H shape, this is your gray matter. No, full of your cell body, soma or pericardion. Now, going back to physiology, we have this what we call the Bell-Magendie law, where your anterior part of the spinal cord is more of the motor neurons, and the dorsal or posterior part of the spinal cord is more of the sensory neurons. So, ayan lang yung ating Bell-Magendie law. Now, your blood-brain barrier, it is a functional barrier that allows a control of the movement of your ions and substances from the blood into the periphery, into the central nervous system. Importanteng ating blood-brain barrier for the protection, no, of our neurons from exogenous substances like your toxins, infectious agents. So it also helps the homeostasis or the balance of composition of different ions and the interstitial fluid of the brain. Now, ano importante na alam natin sa blood-brain barrier? The composition. So, we have the capillary endothelium, we have the basement membrane, and the limiting layer of the perivascular astrocytic feed. So, yung tatlong yon, it forms your blood-brain barrier. Okay, now your choroid plexus important din because it is important in the production and the release of your cerebrospinal fluid. Pinapakita ko lang sa inyo dito, kaya dinigay ko tong picture na to, no, that your ependymal cells, which I included kanina, no, part of the important glial cells in the production of your CSF, okay, that forms your choroid plexus. Now, in the arachnoid villi, okay, this is the main pathway for the absorption of your CSF back into the venous circulation. Napakita na rin to sa head anatomy part. Pero this is your arachnoid villus. Importante yan sa absorption ng CSF. Alright, so again, dapat alam mo ng ependymal cells and your choroid plexus. Now, let's go to your peripheral nervous system. Main component niyan, nerves. Nerves like your cranial nerves, spinal nerves, and peripheral nerves. Ganglia. Dapat ngayon, alam nyo na kapag sinawag na ganglia, it's a collection of body of the cell body of the neurons outside the central nervous system. That's a ganglia. Then we also have your nerve endings. Importante dito na alam natin yung nerve fibers. No? Analogous ang nerve fibers, since we are in the PNS, to the tracts in the central nervous system. They also contains axons and closed with sheath of glial cells. No? Again, peripheral nervous system, sa labas, Schwann cells. Ano other term na Schwann cells? Neurolemocytes. Neurolemocytes. Review lang, baka nakalimutan na. In the CNS, it is your sa loob, oligodendrocytes. Very good. Now, what is the nerve organization? Okay, so like your muscle, meron siyang mga coverings. Here naman, your endoneurium, okay, ito, very pinakamaliit. Let's start with the smallest structure. It surrounds your axon. Your perineurium naman surrounds a group of axons. A group of axons is called a fascicle. So that's your perineurium. And then surrounding the group of fascicles, it is your epineurium. Okay, so yung binabalutan ng epineurium, that is already your peripheral nerve. Again, endoneurium to axon, perineurium to group of axons or fascicles, epineurium group of fascicles. So remember the organization of the nerve. Now, ganglia is just a ovoid structure containing, ito yung sinabi ko kanina, neuronal cell bodies and glial satellite cells. They are the relay stations to transmit nerve impulse. So we have kind of ganglias, different kinds. We have sensory and autonomic ganglia. Ang sensory ganglia nyo, usually it's pseudo-unipolar. Since it is sensory, it receives afferent impulses that go to the CNS. No perineurium, no blood nerve. Nerve ito ha, hindi brain. Barrier function. Kasi nga nasa CNS, PNS tayo. And then your autonomic ganglia naman, they are multipolar neurons. And alam naman natin, autonomic, involuntary activities, which ang usual function is for the maintenance of the internal milieu or internal environment homeostasis. So again, difference of the ganglia, sensory, pseudo-unipolar, autonomic, multipolar neurons. Now, we are done with the nervous tissue. Let's go to the muscle tissue. Ayan, before tayo mag-organ system discussion. Ang muscles nyo are specialized to optimize the universal cell property of contractility. So, ang contraction of your muscle tissue is caused by the sliding interaction of your thick myosin filaments along thin actin filaments. So again, kung nakalimutan to, go back to your physiology. So generate a force for contraction which drives locomotion within organ system, blood, and of the body movement. So there are three types of muscles. Dapat alam na alam niyo na to. We have your skeletal, cardiac, and smooth. Skeletal for quick, forceful contraction. It is voluntary. Ang cardiac nyo naman, vigorous and rhythmic, involuntary. Smooth nyo naman, slow and rhythmic, involuntary. So this is a nice table, no? Differentiating the three components of your muscles. So ang inyong skeletal and cardiac muscle, they are more of cylindrical. No, cylinder shaped sila. And then, ang kanilang nuclei is on the periphery. And then, ang branching, meron lang tayo is your cardiac muscle. Sa lahat ng muscles na nagbabranch lang, cardiac muscles. Ang smooth muscles nyo naman, it is fusiform, cigar-shaped. It is non-striated. Yung dalawa, skeletal and cardiac, striated yan. Pero ang smooth, no striation. Okay, so tandaan nyo yan. So, let's discuss it one by one. Yung mga important points lang, ha? AKA, also known as your striated muscle, your skeletal muscle. It is very long, multinucleated, and then cylindrical in shape. Quick, forceful, voluntary contraction. Important lang, quick discussion lang ng skeletal muscle development. Usually, it starts with your myoblasts. Again, blast, immature, and then it will form into your myotubes. And then your myotubes will become your myofilaments, no? And then you have here your myofilaments that is functional as your muscle fiber. Now here, noteworthy to say, your satellite cells. They are responsible for proliferating and producing muscle fibers after muscle injury. Okay, going back, your motor unit controls the contractions. Again, myoblasts, myotubes, and then myofilaments. Satellite cells, ayan ay ang pumapalit or responsible for the production of your muscle fibers after muscle injury. Like your nerve, meron ding mga coverings ng ating skeletal muscle. So let's talk about the organization. Epimysium, okay guys, ito yon. Dense, irregular connective tissue. Your epimysium surrounds the entire muscle. And then next to that is your perimysium, surrounds the fascicle, which is a bundle of your muscle fibers. And then you have your endomysium that surrounds your muscle fiber. Again, smallest naman tayo to largest, endomysium, perimysium, and then your epimysium. Tandaan nyo yan. Okay? So, ano bang organization? So, you have your muscles, big muscle. And then your big muscle, you have your fascicles. Your fascicles will become your muscle fiber. Your muscle fiber will become your myofibril. Okay, component niya, myofibril. Ang myofibril nyo, okay, is may myofilaments. Okay? Remember, your fascicle is a bundle of your muscle fibers. Ano ulit ang nagko-cover sa bundle of muscle fibers? It is your perimysium. Okay, fascicles. Now, what is the organization within the muscle fibers? So, again, ang tawag naman sa plasma membrane ng ating muscle cell is your sarcolemma. Okay, so it's the plasma membrane plus the external lamina. It has the sarcoplasm. Okay, it has a cytoplasm, contains the myofibrils. And then you also have your sarcoplasmic reticulum here. Okay, it is your smooth endoplasmic reticulum, contains pump and proteins for calcium release and sequestration. Your calcium sequestration, go back to your physiology if you're having difficulty. So your myofibril naman is thin and long bundles that fill the muscle fiber. It has your sarcomere. Your sarcomere is a functional contractile unit of the skeletal and cardiac muscles kasi nga sila yung striations, sila yung striated. Now your Z-lines is the borders of each sarcomere. Z to Z is one sarcomere. Now your I bands, your light bands or isotropic band do not alter your polarized light. Important here, your titin, your titin, largest protein, important accessory protein in I bands, which supports thick myofilaments and connects them to your Z-disc, your titin. Your A bands naman, okay, is your dark bands. This one, it is anisotrophic, kaya siya tinawag na A band, bifringent in polarized light. So this is just a review from physiology, all right? And then you have your myofibril. Okay, you have your thick filament and your thin filament. Your thick filament contains your myosin, which are large complex with two identical heavy chains and two pairs of light chains. May dalawang ulot, isang buntot. Ang thin filament nyo, you have your troponin, tropomyosin, and actin. Ano yung mga important dito? Recall lang. Ang troponin T nyo attaches to tropomyosin. Ang troponin C nyo, C for calcium, binds sa calcium. Ang I inhibit kasi ang troponin I nyo regulates the actin-myosin interaction. Ayan yung nagko-cover sa inyong actin binding site. Okay? Now, again, earlier pinakita ko sa inyo na may satellite cells. This is important in the regeneration of your skeletal muscle. So, it is the source of the regenerating cells, sparse ang kanyang population, okay, lying inside the external lamina of each muscle fiber. Inactive, reserved myoblasts persist after muscle differentiation. Now, after injury, normally, yung mga quiescent cells nyo na satellite, they will become activated. They will proliferate and fuse to form new skeletal muscle fibers. Pero kapag after extensive exercise, your satellite cells fuse with existing fibers to increase muscle mass beyond that which occurs by cell hypertrophy. So anong moral lesson here? Iba ang mechanism ng satellite kapag injury, iba din kapag exercise. Alam yan ng mga bodybuilders. Cardiac muscles naman tayo, it is striated with banding pattern. Only one nucleus, usually centrally located, versus your skeletal muscle na multinucleated. Okay? So, here, important here is your cardiac skeleton. This is a structure of the cardiac muscle that acts as a skeleton of the heart, no? So, actually, it separates the bundles of layers of muscle fibers. So, it's a fibrous connective tissue. Contraction of your individual fibers is all or none. Rate of contraction modified by autonomic innervation. Okay? So, depending if it is parasympathetic or sympathetic. Ano ang major fuel of the heart? It is your fatty acids, stored as triglyceride in a small lipid droplet. Again, going back to the basics, your inclusions. Now, what are the junctional complexes of cardiac muscle? Ito, importante to, must know, your intercalated disc. Your intercalated disc represents the interface between the adjacent cells and consists of many junctional complexes. Now, present in your transverse regions, you have your desmosomes and your fascia adherens junction. Dito naman sa ating, itong transverse region ha, tapos ito namang longitudinal, okay, portion nyo, ayan. You have here your gap junction. Other term, nexus. Again, napag-usapan natin kanina, for rapid impulse conduction, important in the synchrony of contraction of the heart. Okay, so that is your intercalated disc. You have your desmosome here and your gap junction. Versus your skeletal muscle, the regeneration of cardiac muscle is different. It lacks satellite cells, has little potential to regenerate after injury. And usually, kapag after injury, kung ang satellite cells will fuse to another skeletal muscle fiber, here, it will just proliferate fibroblasts. Scar na siya. Okay, so that's your myocardial scars. Kaya bumababa ang function ng iyong heart every after injury because of this lacking capacity of the regeneration of the cardiac muscle cell. Now, our third type of muscle is your smooth muscle. It is specialized for slow, steady contraction under the influence of your autonomic nerves and various hormones. Okay, so ang shape niya elongated, fusiform or spindle shape, tapering, and again, important, unstriated cells. All cells are linked by numerous gap junction because, again, kailangan ng synchrony ng contraction ng inyong smooth muscle. For example, in your intestinal wall. Okay. Now, ang difference dito, kung ang iyong skeletal muscle, they have your tropomyosin, troponin CI. Dito naman, it has dense bodies which contain your alpha-actinine and are functionally similar to your ZDs. Again, it is not striated. Di ba yung ZDs nyo, one of the reason kung bakit nagkakaroon ng striations. Dito, dense bodies, ZDs. It uses your calmodulin and calcium-sensitive myosin light chain kinase, okay, instead of your troponin and tropomyosin. And then you have your cavulae, okay? These are plasmalimal invaginations. Di ba, sa skeletal muscle, you have your T-tubules. Here, you have your cavulae. It contains your major ion channels that control your calcium release from your sarcoplasmic cisterna at myofibrils that initiate the contraction. So your cavulae is functionally similar to your T-tubules, which are not present in the smooth muscle. Again, your T-tubules. Again, mnemonic lang tayo, cavulae, calcium, like your T-tubules. Calmodulin is like your troponin C. Then your dense bodies for your ZDs. So that's the important difference, no, ng skeletal to your smooth muscle. Regeneration of your smooth muscle, it is capable of more regenerative response. After injury, there will be a viable smooth muscle cells undergo mitosis and replace damaged tissue. Mitosis, napag-usapan na natin yan. Contractile parasites from the walls of the small blood vessels participate in the repair of your vascular smooth muscle. So that's the end of your muscle tissue, and we will now begin with the organ system discussion.